Hey guys, so today I just wanted to do a quick little video all about my running journey so far this year in 2018. If you follow me on social media, then you may already know this, but I have gotten back into running this year. I haven't really talked about this on YouTube very much at all, so I just wanted to make a video sort of talk about running my first race this year and just kind of talk about how my year has been so far and my plans for the rest of the year. And I always hate when people apologize for not wearing makeup, but I'm sorry for my lack of makeup and for my appearance. I just got off work and I'm actually about to go run, but I wanted to film this video really quick while I had a few minutes for you guys. So I'm just going with some lip gloss and my nasty looking hair, and we're going with it. So yeah, going back a few years to give you a bit of background on my running. I was a cross-country runner all 4 years of high school and into my first year of college. So I was always training, like even in the off season, I was still running. And I had races, not every weekend, but probably like 3 weekends out of the month. I had 5K races, so I was always in really good shape. I was definitely scrawny in high school, and I was always training. Like I was always physically in good shape, and I was always eating pretty right, eating pretty good, you know. And then my sophomore year of college, I was a swimmer. So I was still, you know, training and staying pretty much in shape. And then even on into my junior year, I didn't do any sports my junior year, but I was still in marching band, so I was at least like relatively active. But then my senior year, I didn't do marching band, I didn't do any sports, and I was getting more heavily into editing and other desk work, so I was very sedentary. I was not very active at all my senior year of college, and that carried on after college graduation. So obviously maintaining my weight wasn't something I was worried about. It just always kind of came naturally. It was never difficult. But then once I stopped being active, I did start to put on some weight. And actually since high school graduation, I put on about 60 pounds, which I know seems like a lot. I don't know since college graduation how much of that weight I put on. Probably about 30 to 40 of it was after college graduation. Like I said, I'm not sure exactly how much weight I gained in college. I know I did gain some, and some of it was just like my body stopped training rigorously year round, and so I got to sort of put on a little bit of the weight that as a female I should have had anyway, you know, in my breasts and my hips and everything like that. But then like after my junior year of college was when the most of it came. So yeah, maybe like 10, 20, 25 pounds or so of that was like during college, but then all of it was like, all the rest of it was after college. So about a year or so after college graduation, I was like, man, I need to get a handle on this. And so I started going to the gym, which was something I'd never done, was just like go to the gym as like a regular person. Like going to the gym was part of my training. Like I went to the school gym or whatever, but this was totally new, being like a gym member or whatever. But I was mostly doing weight training. I wasn't doing a lot of cardio, which that's actually better for, you know, calorie expenditure and everything like that. Like you actually burn calories longer, you get that afterburn more so with resistance training than you do with cardiovascular training. But anyway, so I was strong, I was getting more lean, like I was getting some of that fat off. My weight wasn't actually changing a lot as far as the number on the scale, but I got back down to only about 20 pounds more than when I graduated high school. So again, I've put on about 30 or 40 pounds in the last like couple of years. Like I got some of it off and then put some of it back on. So that's kind of been my journey there with my weight fluctuation. I've had some like really rude questions in the past, like, oh, you should address your weight gain. And so like, here it is, here's me addressing it. But yeah, so I've been going to the gym on and off for a couple of years. Like I would go for like 6 months, then I wouldn't go for like 2 or 3 months. And so I did that for, you know, a couple of years. But then finally the beginning of this year, 2018, I was like, I want to start running again. Because when I was going to the gym before, I didn't really have any like specific goals. It was like, oh, I just want to lose some weight or whatever. Like I didn't have any time constraints on it. I had no relevance. Like I wasn't working toward a specific event or goal. And I really didn't have any like specific goals that I had like made for myself. So when I started running at the beginning of the year, it was like, okay, I want to do a 5K in the spring and I want to do a 10K in the fall. Like that was my original goals for this year. So over the past, like the first 5 months of the year, I was working my way up to running 3.1 miles. I started off very slowly. I started off with just a mile, and I didn't even run that whole mile. Like I worked my way up to running the full mile. I think the first mile I did, I kind of like walked and jogged like on and off. Maybe about half a mile walking, half a mile jogging, but like not all at once. It was like a tenth of a mile here, a quarter of a mile here, like until I worked my way up to running an entire mile. And then I kept adding mileage, and I would do sort of that same process. Like I would go 2 miles, but I was only walking a mile and then running a mile. And then, you know, kind of working my way up to running that full 2 miles just in very gradual increments. And then I finally worked my way up to running 3 miles, or to going 3 miles, and then it was running the 3 miles. So that kind of same process there. You should, on average, be increasing your mileage by no more than 10% per week. 5% per week is recommended to start. So definitely there in that 5 to 10% increase per week, somewhere in that range. More than 10% really just isn't safe. Get a lot of injuries, burnout, overtraining, all sorts of problems you can have with that. But yeah, so I worked my way up to running 3 miles in about 3.5 months or so, somewhere in there. I'd say within the first 3 months, I could at least go 3 miles, you know? So then for about the next 6 weeks or so, it was just sort of increasing my speed, increasing my aerobic efficiency with that shorter distance. And then since then, I have actually been adding more mileage. I'm now up to 6, almost 7. So I'm going to be increasing my mileage more for my goals for this fall, but I'll get into that in just a second. So yeah, I worked my way up to being able to run a little bit more than 3 miles. For that, I actually was running almost 5 miles by the time I had my 5K. So it's always good to be able to do at least a little extra. I think that's the way I was always trained by my cross-country coach. Be able to do more than 3 miles, so 3 miles seems easy. But if you are specifically training for a 5K, and by the time you get to that race, you're not doing more than 3.1 miles, it's not gonna be the end of the world. For me, doing this 5K was just about doing it. I did have a specific time goal in mind, and I actually was only off of that goal by just a few seconds. So I feel like that was a very realistic goal that I set for myself. I almost achieved it, and I keep saying even now, it's like, man, I stopped for water at that water station, and I got like kind of backed up behind people because like a group of people in front of me like stopped and walked for a few feet to the water station. So if I hadn't gotten stuck behind those people and been forced to walk for a few seconds, and then I had to like stop and drink the water and everything. And so if I hadn't done that, I would have definitely hit my time. I wanted a sub 34. That's what I wanted, was those 11-minute miles. And I came in at 34:02. So if I had not stopped, I was literally 3 seconds off of a sub 34. So if I had not stopped at that freaking water station, I would hit my goal. But it's okay. I wasn't off by like 3 minutes or anything, you know what I mean? So I'm okay with it. Like, I'm happy with myself. At first, it was like, man, it was just a few seconds, and that's almost more irritating, but at the same time, I'm within my goals. Like, my goals are not out of reach, and I can attain what I set for myself. So that was very encouraging, just to know, like, I can do this. So sort of along that note, I think that's been my biggest struggle, is that I am not coming into this as a newbie. I am sort of getting back into it after like 8.5 years of not racing. But when you take that much time off, you're basically starting over. So I am starting at the very beginning, pretty much like with anyone else who's just starting out running in their mid-20s. But the hard thing for me about that is that I do have a past to compare myself to. So I feel like I'm doing pretty good as far as like not comparing myself to other people. Like even during that 5K, I wasn't like, oh, stay with this person's pace, or like keep up with this person, or stay ahead of this person. Like I was very focused in, just run your own race, do your thing, don't worry about everybody else around you. I was very, very good about that, I felt like. So I'm not really comparing myself to other people. Like I even have a running group. Again, I'll talk about that in a second. I have a group of people that I run with, and I'm definitely not one of the fastest people in that group, but I don't really compare myself to the other people. It's not like, oh, I need to keep up with so-and-so this week or whatever. I think my biggest downfall is that I'm comparing myself to myself. 10 years ago, actually I started running, I guess about 12 years ago, and only ran for, like I said, about 4 or 5 years consistently. So when I started that, it was like super easy, like I was 13 and it was just like, oh, just go out there and run for a little bit. And even when I stopped running about 17 or 18, it was like, it's still pretty easy. I mean, I was still running on into my sophomore year. So it was about 19 when I just like completely stopped running, I guess. But like I said, I hadn't done a sanctioned race in about 8 years or so. So anyway, getting back into it has been the hardest part of it, because it's like, man, I know what I could do. Like I consistently ran like 21s, 22s in high school, which I know, again, that's not super, super fast, but now running in the 30s, like well into the 30s, it's like, okay, I have a long way to go to get back to where I was. And who knows, I may never get back to that time. I mean, I hope I eventually do, in the coming years and stuff, but that's not an immediately attainable goal, and that's okay. Like I have to keep in mind, like, that's okay. So being a beginner at running in my mid-20s is something I'm not good at because I do have that past to compare to. But I just have to keep in mind, like, I'm basically starting over. I'm doing very well for where I'm at. So, having only run for about the past 5 months consistently, and being able to set an 11-minute mile goal for myself in a 5K and actually stick to that pace is great. My first mile was actually a sub 11, and then my next 2 miles were somewhere in like that 11-20 average range, somewhere in there. That last 10th of a mile was rough. Like, I was feeling it that last 10th of a mile. But you know, I got through it, and like I said, I was just only a few seconds off of my goal time, or the time that I wanted to have. So my plans for the rest of this year, and I guess on into the future, even past that, like I said, I initially just wanted to run a 10K this fall, but I am now running a entire, Louisville has like a fall run-a-thon. So you have a 5K, and then 2 weeks later a 10K, and then about a month later a half marathon. So I am now signed up for that entire fall run-a-thon. So that 10K I was doing, that was the 10K I had my sights set on, but now I'm also doing the 5K before and the half marathon after. So that's something cool that I get to do in September and October. And then in July, actually just in a few weeks, I am doing a double down, or a 10K followed by a 5K. They call it a distance challenge. So it's a total of 15 kilometers, which is a total of 9.3 miles, but I will just be doing the 10K, like the 6.2 miles, and then I'll have a little rest, like maybe 15-20 minutes in between the 10K and the 5K before I have to head back out for that double down. So you do have to hold a 13:40 pace on the trails. This is a trail run, by the way. I don't think I mentioned that. My 5K was a road run, a road race, which is pretty normal. That's what most 5Ks, 10Ks, anything like that you sign up for is probably going to be on the road, but this specific distance challenge is on the trails. So you have to be able to hold a 13:40 pace on the trails, which is no problem for me. I actually usually hold sub 12s on a trail, so I don't think I'll have any problem with that. But then, of course, the quicker you finish the 10K, the more rest you get between that and when the 5K starts, because it starts at a very specific time. So that's the whole distance challenge part of it, is doing the double down, the 10K followed by the 5K. So I've got that coming up in July, and I'm training for that, and I'm super excited. So my current mileage is up to about 7 miles. That's where I'm comfortable. So for the next few weeks, I'll be kind of working up to being able to do that 9 miles. I like to be able to complete 9 miles before I do the double down. I think that's a very smart goal. Even though I will get that little break between the 6 miles and the 3 miles, knowing that I can do it back to back would give me a little more confidence, I think, going into that. So I may or may not get there. Like I said, I don't want to increase my mileage more than 10%. And I want, you know, not a huge taper for these little races. You don't have to do a huge taper, but I don't want to run 9 miles the weekend before the race. I'd like to do it at least 2 weekends before, so we'll see how close I get to that safely. But that's currently my goal. And then obviously I'm going to continue increasing my mileage. I'd like to be able to run at least 14 miles before the half marathon. Again, I want to give myself about 2 or 3 weeks there to recover from that before I have the half marathon. And then I've also got the 10K and the 5K in there. So I'm just increasing my mileage steadily by about 10% a week up until the half marathon. And then after the half marathon, I will actually be training for a marathon next April. So originally my goals were to do a 5K and a 10K this year, and then next year in 2019 to do a half marathon. And then the following year I wanted to do a full marathon. So now I've kind of like upped my timeline a little bit. I'm doing my first half marathon this October, and then my first full marathon will be next spring, next April. So I do just plan on steadily increasing my mileage until the marathon, or not up until the marathon, until a little bit before, and then obviously I'll do the taper before the marathon itself. And I will do I probably won't do a video on every single race I do this year because I feel like I can get pretty repetitive, but I will definitely do a video after my first half and my first full marathon, and I may even do a video after that distance challenge because I feel like that's kind of different. I don't see that a lot, especially with trails. All of my other races this year will be street or road races, so I prefer running on trails as far as like the impact. I do have some past injuries, so it's nice to just not super re-injure those and be able to run on the trail. So I really like trail training, but you don't get to trail race a lot, so that's pretty unique. So speaking of those injuries, I do feel like there are some things, kind of going back to what I said earlier about how getting back into it is hard. I know there are definitely some factors that are not necessarily holding me back, but that are sort of making this maybe a bit of a slower process than it might be for the average person. Obviously the age is factoring in. 25 isn't old, but it is a little older to start something new athletic, especially when you have had a past, like I said, comparing yourself to your teenage athletic self as a person in their mid-20s, it's gonna be very different. So definitely age is a factor. My weight is a factor. I know that when I was running before, I was like 50, 60 pounds lighter than I am right now. Obviously running has helped me to lose some weight, and the more I run, the more weight I notice dropping off, so that's great. I didn't really start running as a form of weight loss or as a path to weight loss. I was just going to the gym in general with no goals. That was my path to weight loss, trying to eat better and everything. but the running has helped with that for sure. So there are all sorts of videos and resources out there on running for weight loss. This is not a video about that, but yeah, so age and weight is a factor, and also my previous injuries are a factor. I injured both of my knees, my right ankle, and my left hip when I was running in high school. One per year. One each of my 4 years in high school, I injured something. So those injuries now, especially after being out of it for so long, they definitely do play a factor in my training, which is why I've been taking my training so gradually, and I feel like it does take a little bit longer for me to recover now than it did like 10 years ago when I had those injuries, or when I first, got those injuries. So that has definitely played a factor into it. I do actually have an entire video about shin splints. That's a recurring injury that I've had all of my time that I've been running. So I have a video on how to help with that. But my other injuries, I just pretty much do the same thing, compression, rest, ice, all that. Rice method, it never fails. I have even had those injuries checked out by a physical therapist, and everything's good to go. So don't worry about that. I don't want people in the comments being like, you don't need to be running if you're injured. Like, everything's good to go. I just do have to take it more gradually and more carefully, and just be really, really diligent about my recovery. So currently I do run 3 days per week. I just added that third day just a few weeks ago. I was gonna say a couple months, but it's not really been 2 full months. So yeah, I just added that third day. I was just running 2 days a week, and just a few weeks ago I added that third day. And then probably after the half marathon, I will be adding a 4th day a week to sort of help increase my weekly mileage for that marathon training. So when I was just doing 2 days a week, it was pretty much just 2 easy runs. I had a nice easy run with friends, with my running group. Yes, I'm still going to talk about that, don't worry. I had my nice easy run with them once a week, and then I had my distance run on the weekends. So now I've added a third day where I can really do a nice speed workout. That's something I didn't have before, and I think that's also going to help. Obviously adding mileage helps, but doing those speed specific workouts is also going to help increase your speed in the shorter races. So it's definitely something I've been working on just the past few weeks. And then when I add that 4th day a week, it'll probably be another easy day, or it might be a speed day, just kind of depending on how my week has been, how I'm feeling, all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's how my training has gone and how it will continue to go for the next year or so. So yeah, about this running group. When I first started running back in January, for about the first 2 months of the year, I was running by myself. I was even doing some training on a treadmill because it was icy outside. So I was getting outside when I could, but I was just all by myself. I was out there just chugging along. And because of my past coaching, I know how to run. Like, I know how to train and things like that, but it was hard to motivate myself. So I did find a local running group towards the end of February, beginning of March, somewhere in there. I found a local running group, and I have made so many friends through that. Like, some of my closest friends right now are from that running group, and it's just the most awesome group of people. Like, they are so supportive. None of them were there for my 5K. I was actually the only one from that group that went to run that specific 5K, but everybody was so supportive on social media. Like, I knew that group had my back out there. And it was really, really cool. So that's something I would definitely suggest if you are a beginning runner, you're trying to get back into it, whatever. Find at least one other person that is running. Like, find a buddy. I'm the kind of person, I like to do everything by myself. I'm a very solitary person, especially when it comes to training and stuff. I like to train alone. Like, I just like to do my own thing and not have other people's influences. So joining this group was really getting me out of my comfort zone, but I knew that it would help motivate me. I knew it would help push me forward and give me the support I needed, and it's done exactly that and more. Like, I go out to the bar with these people. Like, I'm not the kind of person that goes out to a bar, but I do with these people. Like, they've really got me out of my comfort zone, and they've really given me the friendship that I needed. So yeah, definitely find at least one person, or more than one person if you can, that you have something in common with. Maybe you have some common goals with running. That's another thing. This group is super, super into the distance stuff. Like, all of them are really into like the relays, the team relays, the ultra distances, they're really into like the double downs, which I don't know if I'll ever double down with a marathon or a half, 2 days back to back there, but they're really into that crazy kind of stuff, like the 2-day Ragnar races. Like, they're all into that. So some of that stuff I'm not super into yet. I don't know if I'll ever get to that place, but they've really, really pushed me, not like out of my goals. Like, I don't think that they have pushed me into unrealistic goals, but that's actually a lot of why my timeline for my marathon and half marathon goals have moved up, is because they're like, no, you can do this. Like, and it's not like they're pushing you to do something you don't want to do. It's just like they're pushing you forward. They're making you achieve more than you think you can. So anytime you can find a group like that with that camaraderie, with that support, it's always going to help you move forward. So yeah, I think that's really all I have to say about this. I feel like I'm probably leaving something out, but I also feel like I rambled on for like 7 days. So if you have any questions that I did leave out in the video, like if you want your questions answered and I didn't answer it already in all of my ramblings, ask me in the comments and I'll do my best to answer. As always, I hope you're having a fantastic Friday, and I will see you next week. Bye. Man, I knew I would forget something. Okay, so I'm sure my camera has moved because I took it off the tripod to go edit the video and then realized I forgot to say this. The 5K that I did was a pretty small race, so that's another tip I have if you are a beginning runner. Don't go out and find like the most elite event that you can find. Maybe you find a local race, a small something. This was like a small fundraiser. This shirt is actually from the race. It was the Outrunning Autism 5K for FEAT, which is Families for Effective Autism Treatment. So it was a pretty small race, and there were a lot of walkers. There was also like a 1 mile fun run. So find something like that that is pretty small that you won't be super overwhelmed by. And also, like I said, I know there were some walkers in the 5K. I think most of the walkers did like the 1 mile fun run. But a lot of the people there were just there to do it just because it was a fundraiser, and they weren't super worried about their time or anything like that. So I actually was in the top 20% overall. I think maybe even like the top 15% overall. And I was definitely in like the top 15% of like the female category, and also like the top 10% of my age group. So seeing those statistics afterwards kind of boosted my confidence. It's like, okay, you're not horrible at this. You know, you can do this. And so it kind of helped me to push forward. I think if I'd come in like dead last or like in the last like 10% or whatever, I would have been like, man, I suck so bad. And that's not to say that like if you do your first race and you do come in dead last that you should feel discouraged. But I know that I personally would have been very discouraged. So find something like that, kind of be that like big fish in a small pond type mindset with at least your first race ever that you do. Because I personally feel like if I had gone out in a big, huge elite race and been super overwhelmed by the crowds and just like the whole scene, that I probably would have been more discouraged. Maybe I would have run faster because the pace of the race would have been faster. Because honestly, I was pretty much out there alone the whole time. Like there was the really fast people ahead of me and then like the really slow people behind me, and I was kind of in the middle, just like struggling on my own. But that's kind of how it is. Like I'm at that point of running where I'm not super fast and I'm not super slow. I'm kind of in the middle. So I am more on my own. Like even in my running group, sometimes like I'm either slowing down to stay with friends, or I'm like really, really pushing myself, or they're holding themselves back to stay with me. You know, I'm at that kind of weird in between phase. So maybe I would have run faster. Like maybe if I had done a bigger race, my pace would have been faster just because the race pace was faster. But I feel like this is the perfect way to get back into it. So yeah, now I think I'm actually done rambling. I'm actually gonna go edit this. Yeah, have a good day.